Let's start with Bob. Bob, bringing on the show. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it.
All right, my pleasure. Give us this, the SUP-X that you've got going on. Give us some background on you first before we go into it, because I could see that you have a wealth of depth to what you do. And then let's talk about what SUP-X is and where you're going with that.
That sounds good. Thanks, Michael. My background's actually not in startups. I was really a structured finance guy for a Goldman Sachs subsidiary. Actually, it's in your neck of the woods in Dallas, out in Las Colinas. And I also was a COO for a couple of mid-market businesses for Prudential Financial. But I got into the startup world about 7 years ago. I ran a nonprofit here in South Florida. And I started creating some events, and one of them was an expo of top-tier startups in the state, and it grew so big that eventually I decided to fund the event on my own. I moved it into the convention center in Broward, Fort Lauderdale, as most people would know it, and we attract about 1,000 to 1,500 people from a couple of dozen states and a half dozen countries a year.
Wow. Okay. What kind of companies have been coming to your events, and where are they going with this? Are they getting funding, or are they just seeking clients? Walk me through that.
Great question. So the real mission of the event is to create an interesting forum where investors, entrepreneurs, and service providers can collide, meet each other, network, be educated on, cool topics of interest. I'd heard you say in your intro, you went to a Bitcoin conference. Cryptocurrencies and blockchain are a big topic this year for us. But we try to create, interesting content that people can learn from and put in people in interesting networking environments so that startups can learn from experts and also meet people that they can raise money from. We also try to make it interesting to investors that we curate high quality startups from all across the United States so that there's some nice investment opportunities for them as well. Okay. And we try to have a good time in the process. It's designed to be, a fun, friendly, interesting event.
When is it?
This year it'll be July 26th, which is a Thursday. And as I said, it'll be at the Convention Center in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
It's an all-day event.
Well, shifting gears a little bit, what are the typical issues you see with hundreds of startups that you interact with each year?
I think a couple of things. One is poorly formulated ideas. I think startups need to realize that there's an opacity to that market, and that is, you might have a nifty idea, but there's probably 5 other people in just the Dallas MSA that have the same idea, and there's another 5 in the Miami MSA, and then Atlanta and DC. In other words, very few things are started that are earth-shattering, and in terms of their intellectual property, et cetera. People usually are chasing the same idea, and one wins to market, whether it's, the light bulb, the car, the hot air balloon. One person ends up getting credit for history, but there were 20 people trying to be that person. And so it's important to have a well-formulated, well-thought-out idea that has been proven on some set of potential customers first. The second thing is capital. Startups are enamored with Shark Tank and winning startup contest and raising money. But if they're not willing to bootstrap it with $50,000 to $100,000 of their own money from friends and family or their own savings, they're going to have a hard time attracting capital again unless it's something that's incredibly interesting. If you're not willing to invest in it, the people that know you best aren't willing to invest in it, the odds are that other people aren't going to be likely to unless it's incredibly novel. And again, there are a few things that are incredibly novel.
Tell me about, let me drill down on that point. I'm going to stay
Sure.
there for just a second. Tell me about the most incredibly novel ideas that you've seen come across your desk yet. And then I'm going to get into some other things up on the agenda, what's coming up.
The most fun example I've seen and one of the most novel is one of the least technical. And I met a guy who was a missionary who had gone to Haiti and ended up getting terribly sick because of the water there and ended up having to stay in a hospital there for 3 months after his mission. And he's a scientist, and he came back and invented a water filtration system that uses those typical, 5-gallon plastic paint buckets that'll purify through this incredible filter he had made in Asia that you can use it with a hand pump to filter an enormous quantity of, I don't know, 100 gallons of water an hour or something like that. And I thought it was an excellent example of a social need meeting ingenuity and simplicity all at the same time. And then he was going around and selling it primarily to NGOs and governmental agencies. And I thought it was an incredible example of heart and entrepreneurship brought together. And and that was, non-internet based, non-blockchain, something, very simple.
Yeah, that's good. All right. On your agenda, I'm looking at it, challenges of being a diverse entrepreneur. Give us an idea what you're going to be talking about and the people that are on the panel, because obviously you're picking the best people for the agenda.
So each year, SUP-X starts off with some sort of diversity forum because people from those communities are typically underrepresented, and we want to make sure that we pay extra emphasis to provide them the right opportunities. So 2 years ago, that forum was a Women in Entrepreneurship Forum. Last year, it was Diversity in Entrepreneurship Forum, and I think that's the agenda you're looking at. Mm-hmm. And then this year, we have a really cool forum, and it's called #WomenForWomen. And #WomenForWomen is designed to be the largest gathering of angel groups, seed series, funds, and venture capital funds in the United States this year that are focused on investing in female entrepreneurs and women founders. And we have a woman who's on the board of the Angel Capital Association, who's a friend of mine named Marcia Daywood, who's helping chair that forum and helping to get those groups. We think that we'll have between 2 and 3 dozen such funds involved in that forum this year. And that forum every year is probably the most popular thing that we do. And it's really fun to do, too.
Got it. The mission, obviously, is to expose these startups to the right people, but are you finding that you're generating your own ecosystem by being able to bring these people in? I was talking to somebody else today or throughout the last couple of weeks, and that's really what's going on with the startup world.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who are playing small but important roles in the development of an ecosystem, and we hope that we're one of those in the South Florida ecosystem and that we're becoming more important even nationally, although that's probably delusions of grandeur. But I think all these, organizations, entrepreneur support organizations, angel groups, venture capital funds, governmental agencies, private foundations, all of these organizations are vital in creating an ecosystem, whether that ecosystem is where I live in Miami or where you are in Dallas. It takes all of those to really make it happen in a decision that we're going to change whatever economy we're in to an information-based economy instead of, say, oil and gas, perhaps in Texas, or travel and tourism here in Florida. And I'm sure your ecosystem, like ours here, has evolved a lot in the past 5 to 10 years because of all those players. Some of them more important than others, but because of all of their efforts.
I think you're on the cutting edge of where investment is going. In light of what's happening with the marketplace, I think a lot of investors, not just individual investors, but all the way up to institutional investors, they're going to start allocating at least 10% of their portfolio to startups. And it's companies like yours that are going to help support the ecosystem for the entire country, if not the world. Would you agree with that?
Well, Michael, you probably know a lot more about investing than I do, but the private markets are really where things are these days in terms of real yields. I mean, a lot of companies are never going public. I mean, they're just staying private forever. The Facebooks, Ubers, and others of the world, are delaying for incredibly long times to go public. And look, it's not for the faint of heart. The vast majority of startups fail, and you have to have a broad enough portfolio so that you have diversity in that portfolio so that the 1 to 4 that make up for the 15 to 20 that don't. And so you need to be a sophisticated investor with a lot of money to be able to play there. But it is where good yields can be achieved if you join the right group, which has good due diligence processes and good monitoring processes, and it's not just a social club.
Bob, we've got to go for now, but thank you for being a guest, and I want to talk to you, if not later today, sometime tomorrow, about the people who come through your door.
That sounds great, Michael. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Have a good day.
You too. Bob Fitz, founder, producer, SUP-X, SUP-X.org, and the StartUpExpo.com. When we come back, we're going to bring on Ed Baxter, the Private Equity Spotlight. We'll be right back after these messages. Segment brought to you by thevitaminpatch.com.